Today we're going to be talking about what is desirability as we define it in our research lab, how specifically we study it, and go over some familiar examples, and then look at how we put this theory into practice in creating a new game that's called Chef League that's launching very soon. It's exciting. All right, so what is desirability? If you look at this can, oh, what did that sound? Desirability is, oh, we've got to listen to it one more time. It's about expectation and anticipation that an experience will be all that we hope, or at least what we hope, and maybe even exceed those expectations. And this, if you saw this can after hearing that sound, maybe your desirability, your desire for that can, whatever the beverage is, might go down a little bit. That's followed by an emotional appraisal of reality, of the real experience that we encounter after that moment of anticipation. So if the liquid that you find after you see this, hear this sound and open a can is this chick beer, maybe that's what you were really looking for, and you evaluate and appraise that as positively. But maybe you were pretty excited to get Fat Tire beer or something like that. You'd be more excited if that's what you get. Or maybe that sound was making you think of soda, and Coca-Cola might be what you want. So a simple model that we can use is along the y-axis there is a person's point of view. So that's their sensory anticipation, their values-driven or signaling anticipation, and their emotional anticipation. And we can have that first sound that we hear of the can, and then we see, yep, it's a can. So if you were thinking of something that comes in a bottle, maybe the can changes that. And so depending on which one of these people you are, hoping for Fat Tire, hoping for chick beer, or hoping for Coke, this is going to play out differently for you. Right? The people who got Fat Tire in the can are the people who, at the top of this, are going to appraise that experience most positively of the others. All right, but the reality is that desirability and studying it is complex. So it differs by people, it differs from novice to expert, it's always changing. Brands often get blindsided because of confirmation bias and invest in listening to how it is changing over time. I don't know if you're a fan of the Dos Equis ads, but this says, he gave his father the talk, and it says, can you get Facebook on this thing? And I thought they were clever ads. So how do we study desirability conceptually? From our point of view, we're looking at it related to language and related to learning. So I want you all to think of a song that you recently came across that you heard and you liked. Just get a song in your head. Think about that. Everybody has one? Something? All right. And then I want you to try to articulate again in your head why you like that song specifically. So for most of us, we notice things that we like or dislike, but we actually kind of struggle to describe them very effectively. So you might be, I don't know, you might be into Cardi B or this latest Lady Gaga, Bradley Cooper song, any of these, but we're trying an experience, we're noticing, we're liking it, but we're not doing this next step, which is being able to know all of the labels that effectively describe why we like that thing and enable us to find more of that thing efficiently. I'm interested in this for a second reason, which is related to how people advance in creativity. So at the bottom of this triangle, we have a little mini creativity. That's when you're able to be creative for you. So like maybe you put coconut milk in your coffee. That's the first time you've ever done that. That's creative for you, but it's not actually that creative, broadly speaking. Middle creativity is when you're creative in your domain, and big creativity is really often what we're talking about when we talk about innovation and groundbreaking products. I'm really interested in empowering more people to get to big C, but it really starts with empowering them to get to little c, and that's related to whether they ever develop that language to categorize and find experiences that they might enjoy. So most of us really instinctively evaluate what we like or dislike without learning to articulate why. And I study what people mean when they like or dislike something, even when they lack the language of describing what they mean. And part of how I do this is by looking at people who go further than that. So there are some people who go further and they develop a desirability point of view that they can articulate. So we go back to the song that you're thinking and how you try to describe it in your head. This is what experts use to describe whether they like or dislike a song. A specific type of expert. This is like a sensory evaluation type of expert. So they can analyze in their minds the tempo, the tertiary time signature, and a lot of other things that most of us lack the language to even really differentiate our experiences based on that. So this is more what that full cycle looks like. So up in the blue corner, you have noticing the songs you like or dislike, and then learning the labels to describe why you like or dislike them. And then getting to the point where you have clear criteria to structure those experiences, getting feedback. This is where products come in. Do products allow you to get that kind of feedback or not on your successes and failures and trying to find new music that you like? Learning to get to the point where you can critique effectively music that you don't like, and learning to get a differentiated point of view. That point of view helps you more efficiently find new things. So some of the benefits of being able to have this full cycle are that you are faster at analysis, you're faster at search, you can be more experimental, possibly even more creative. You spend less time sorting through experiences that you really aren't going to like. And you also, because you can articulate your voice is heard more by designers. So you are more of a participant in the design of the things that you might later enjoy. All right, this applies to a wide range of fields. Some of you might know this scene from The Devil Wears Prada. I don't know if we have people have seen, and so she's looking at these two turquoise belts, and she says, "Oh, they're so different," and she's making a joke. She thinks they look exactly the same, and then she gets schooled by Miranda Kerr, who is the Anna Wintour character in this movie. But anyway, I'm not going to go into it today, but you can apply this across a wide range of fields, beyond flavor, beyond music, beyond games, many different types of products. And I'm happy to answer questions about those later if you have them. So next, how do we study desirability practically speaking? So we've gone over what it is, conceptually how we think about it, but how do we do it? So we start by analyzing qualitative and quantitative reviews of experiences. We start with small data sets and then we build much larger data sets. We distinguish experts from novices, and so we look at sort of where they are on that circle that I just showed you. We turn distinct patterns. Once we have distinct patterns, we turn them into algorithms that we can run and eventually create little simulations, sort of AI that can make choices in our system. I'll explain this a little bit more in a moment. And then we also develop ways for us to continue listening so that we can avoid the trap of confirmation bias. And then most importantly, and this is a thing that I hope you'll take away from this talk, we also try to build into these products ways to help users develop their own ability to articulate and understand their point of view, because that also makes them better at signaling how we could improve products for them. So we're also, in this case, not just researchers. So the game Chef League that's coming out, this gives you a little overview of what it is.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys. So in this case, this game is meant to be fun first, but the more that you play it, you also learn from the chefs that we have built into the game. There real chefs, and there are little chef AIs that are based on the data that I'll walk you through here. So this game is also very personal to me in the sense that this is not funded by grants or anything else. It's taken me 3 years to build it. It's been brutal, but it's so fun. And 3 years in, we're on pre-order in the App Store right now, and I still play it. And I think that is kind of amazing because you all know how exhausting it is to make a game. But I really love reality chef shows. But I'm also a pretty introverted, shy person, and I don't want to be on reality TV. So I thought that it could be sort of interesting to learn from these in a game, and like, could you beat Bobby Flay every day, on your phone, sort of privately? And so it took the first couple of years to build the data for this, and then it took the last year to build the game. So it starts back in 2015 with this flavor genome project. And so we started categorizing how food tastes to humans, which is actually the poorest data that we have on flavor. So we have a lot of data on distribution of food and beverage items. We have a lot of, and very rapidly accelerating scientific data on flavor compounds that are in different things, but we don't have a lot of data on how food tastes to people and the diversity of palates that we have. And so we started looking into that and linking it to emotion and culture, cultural associations that people have. And then we went into the small scale data development. So this is qualitative and quantitative reviews with real chefs. We were really focused on how they, did they like something or not, and how they described it. So let me give you an example of what a helpful articulation versus a non-helpful one. So a non-helpful review is, that was gross. It doesn't give us very much information about what is wrong with the item or how it might be improved. A helpful review is that this is bland, it needs salt, and experts know that salt can come in the form of salt, but it can also come in functionally, it can come in the form of feta cheese or something that is salty and brings other properties to the item, right? So that's what we're talking about when we talk about the difference of someone who has this language versus doesn't have this language. And then we move to much bigger data sets. So at this stage, we're looking at about 1.5 million different reviews from real chefs of real recipes. We begin to be able to differentiate people just based on the language that they use, by expertise, and by degree of experimentation. So we also know, did they make a thing? So the experimentation is being done that way. So this is an example of an expert palate versus a novice palate that we were able to ascertain from the data. So we can then build, as I said before, we can turn this into algorithms, and we can begin to move through new recipes with these algorithms and go back and forth between real chefs and this data to see how that matches up. So there was a show, it's not on the air anymore, it's called The Taste. It had Anthony Bourdain, bless him, Nigella Lawson, Ludo, and it's had some other celebrity guest chefs. So we analyzed the history of that show. And the show is really focused on one bite of food, and then they're blind to who made it, and they talk about it. And they give it an evaluation of this person moves forward or not. And so we looked at the raw data for each of these, and then we could also simplify that eventually to see that there are distinct patterns in how these chefs are voting on this reality show. And because this show is blind to the personality of who made the food, it's particularly interesting from an analysis point of view. We did a bunch of other experiments. We looked at chefs primarily in the Boston area and learned how they think through flavors, and particularly how they invent new dishes and what that process looks like, so that we could modify our AI chefs in this game. And we've collaborated with MIT and Harvard on some different things. This delightfully paired feelings for dinner was looking at, this was an emotional menu. There was no food or beverage item listed on the menu. The menu items were things like a slap in the face, and then that got interpreted by the chef and the sommelier team And then we built the first version of our software, and we hosted a dinner where it was sommeliers versus software for pairing foods and beverages, and then the audience decided what they liked better. And the software did pretty well. It did about equal to the sommeliers, which was better than we had hoped at this point. So this is an example of what that early software looked like. You could go through it and you could look up any food, any beverage, and it would tell you like critical factors related to it, and it would also tell you what chefs think this goes best with. This was interesting. It was interesting for a very nerdy person like me, but I don't really think it's a product that other people really wanted. So we hadn't yet turned this into a game, but it was a critical step along the way. So then we got to the point where we could turn these algorithms into AI chefs that could make choices. So we could, with a new recipe data set, we could see how Nigella Lawson would likely vote on new items that would come up, and we could differentiate across these three. And then the next step was, in terms of making it into a game, is how can we make you versus Nigella or one of our other 6 AI chefs possible? And then that comes back to our language question. How can we build this game in a way that capacitates you to get savvier about the language that you use? And so takeaways from this before we open it up to question, in the products that you're building, thinking about how you might model the sensory expectations, the emotional expectations, and the signaling expectations of your users and the key moments over time, and see what that path might look like. And how might you add feedback loops, particularly if I go all the way back here to this diagram. Where along this circle might you be able to add feedback loops that would capacitate your users to not only get smarter for their own benefit, but also to communicate more effectively with you about how you might improve your products? Thank you. Happy to take questions if people have questions. Yes.
Could you maybe describe the overall thesis and kind of premises of the Desirability Lab, and like what the main kind of like mandate and thesis is?
Sure. So that's a big question. We are primarily about education. Like when I showed this diagram here, like this is a big part of who we are as a lab. I do a lot of work with companies for products, and then it's not always about education. But first and foremost in my lab, I'm looking at how do we empower our students to move up this, this diagram to become really effective creators from their point of view. And surprisingly, one of the things that shocks me the most about Harvard students, they're super smart, that's not surprising, but many of them haven't, they're really good at following the rules, but they haven't done a lot of the work of developing their own point of view that they're going to design from. And so that's the thing that I personally care the most about, and that my lab has embedded in everything that we do. And then I think to do that effectively, it takes us into some of these other spaces that we talked about. Like I need to be able to take them through this cycle for themselves, and it needs to be open to being around their interests. I also, from a broader market thesis point of view, I think people are going to get a little bit tired of products that are sort of addictive and not designed in their best interest. And call me an optimist, but I think that they will really appreciate products that are also designed to help them develop their own point of view and become smarter in different ways. And I'm really interested in experimenting in that. I could be totally wrong. But that's the experiment I want to do. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, hi. One of the things that your talk made me think about, and like one of the really important things as a game designer, is getting user feedback, doing
Yeah.
playtesting, things like that. And I think one of the biggest challenges there is getting good feedback because, oftentimes people don't know what they want. And so that's what this sounds exactly like, but it also sounds like this is something that's kind of built up over time and working with someone over a large period. So if you do just have like an afternoon with someone or even a couple hours, do you have any kind of methods for getting that better feedback and getting them kind of up to speed on the language quickly?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, you're like talking about a little experiment design, right? And so you would have your upfront explanation of what the key terms that we're going to be looking at in this period of time might be, right?
Yeah, or just, you put your game in front of them and you say like, what's your favorite part? Or like, that, it's hard for them to kind of answer that because they don't really know necessarily what goes into making a game. They might just say, I don't know, I like Halo, make it more like Halo when,
Right.
That's not exactly what you're going for.
Yeah, it's a hard problem, especially in the time frame that you're talking about. I empathize with that. I think, because you also want the unadulterated feedback, right?
Yeah.
So the way that we would usually do that, we don't do a lot of specifically the frame that you're talking about, but we would do the normal first part, and then we would have probably some worksheets that have terms on them that are key terms that we're trying to like. So you're saying you want it to be like Halo, but like which of these terms would really is what you mean? And I think people would be pretty good at that. It does mean more work for your team to set that up, but you're also you'll get more valuable data from it.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, and then like the broader picture is how do we educate them in school, maybe even so that they're coming out with those that better terminology. Yeah, yeah. I don't know how this goes. Yes, please.
Hi. I wanted to say, as a Ravenclaw, I'm incredibly delighted that you would work towards making games to help people learn, because that is totally up my alley. But my question was, a lot of times when I talk colloquially, informally to people, coworkers, about games, as a designer, it really interests me what they like about it. But they have a tendency to sort of poach vocabulary from reviews and things like that in a way that doesn't genuinely express their own idea. They're just sort of mimicking what they read or heard through YouTube or Metacritic or things like that. Would you have any way to approach that so that you could get more personal and authentic feedback from them?
And these are users or designers on your team?
Users.
I mean, I think it's probably a little bit of a similar answer to the last question. First of all, it's very common that people do that, and what he was talking about as well, that is normal. Like the people who manage to get this full cycle are not normal. They're very, very rare. But that's why like these two brown bits, those are the bits that I think are, realistically achievable, where people could over time learn more of the terms, and that we could be building products that give some feedback loops that give them the terms for what they're experiencing and evaluating. So some of this I think you can do inside of a game. So I don't have it showing up here, but inside Chef League there are these ingredient challenges, and so it's like, do you know what a strawberry really tastes like? And most people don't. They're up in the notice things you like. They know if they like or dislike strawberries. But we then give them this little quiz where they have to move along sliders. How acidic is it? How bitter is it? And the reason we're doing that is to give them the vocabulary and to get them to pay attention to those differences. So I don't know if you have the opportunity to build a little bit of that into your game in some way.
I'll see if I can.
Yeah, and if not, I would give the same answer as before. How can you, in your user testing, expose them to the terms that might more effectively describe their experience?
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Some of this also you can do automatically. So like in songs, you know that they like or dislike this song. You don't need to ask them about the tempo. You can figure all of that out on your own. Yeah, which is what Echo Nest did, and Echo Nest was bought by Spotify for $100 million. So there's some value to getting this right. Yes.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for giving this talk.
Yeah.
So in the trailer for Chef League, it looks like you are asking potential users in the future to parse a lot of data and like assign a lot of variables, and there are a bunch of sliders I saw that they're going to match up with acidity and things. I was just curious if you could talk a little bit about the UX that went into not overwhelming your users with all the stuff that you're asking them to consider when they're sort of playing through these challenges.
Sure. I mean, that video is like on ultra speed, right, to get into the 30-second window that the App Store requires. But yeah, they're all voluntary challenges. So the ingredient challenges where you're moving sliders are really kind of practice challenges. So that's only the users who want to do that are going to do that. The really fun challenges are where you're competing against chefs and our little chef AIs. And those are to fix recipes. And all you do is pick up flavor to fix it. So you don't have to move any sliders or anything. But it's a really good point. So how do you make it really easy for people to pick up the game? And we've tried our best to do that. I mean, the market will tell us soon when we drop it.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Please.
Okay. Hi. So I had a question more about on the disliking end of it. How do you educate people that might be on the undesirability scale of things? Basically, what the concrete example that I was thinking of is often gamers are reacting to things in games without being educated about the issues that propel those changes. So things like social issues or like representation or things like that. When gamers are reacting to things and they're not educated about why those choices were made, and they see it at a very surface level, and they feel like it's I don't know what their problem is, but so how do you educate? Are there any techniques for breaking the barrier of dislike into education?
Yeah, I want to spend a little bit more time with your question. Let me go back to this diagram here. So, I mean, I think there's a difference between educating a user and empowering them to use the more accurate description of their experience, right? And on that far side, you have what are their expectations? So it's key for you to get a sense of what is the expectation of this user, that you are then presenting something to them that they're disliking. And it's violating their expectations somehow. The value is in really getting to that expectation, because it may be that their expectation can be aligned with what you're trying to do, but the way it's happening, you're assuming what they're saying, and they don't have the language to more effectively articulate what they're saying. So this is hard to fill in, but I think that is ultimately your goal, is to see what are these people hoping for in terms of the sensory experience, in terms of when I say signaling experience, what that really is, it's related to meaning and value. So they might have a fundamental belief about what a type of game should allow them to do, and that's a value that is coming into this simple diagram, and you're somehow violating that. And as long as that is still happening, you're still going to have tension there. But it may be that there's a way to unlock that. I hope that's helpful. Feel free to follow up after if you want more detail for that.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yes?
So, hello, and thank you for the talk. I wanted to ask a little bit about your method of validating the quality of the software you've built. So presumably you'll give it to some people before release. You'll try to figure out if this is going to satisfy them to a certain extent. What is your approach to testing if what you have is, good?
Sure. So, it's an indie project, so we are a little bit limited in what we're doing. But we first tested with friends and family, and then we have, QA remote testers that we sorted out a lot of bugs with, and then we've done load testing. And then we've come back to, you know, mechanics testing at this stage.
I'm talking more about not the bugs side of it, but the satisfaction side of it. So you mentioned how difficult it is to get the truth out of people.
Yeah.
So somebody says, you know, did you have fun with this app, or did you like this game? They're like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can see whether they continue to play it. I think that's a meaningful one. I don't know. I mean, I don't think I'm going to surprise you with my answer here. We're doing our best to do what you all try to do. I explicitly send them a little simple survey after they test it on like, is it fun? Would you play it again? Would you recommend it to others? And then I look at, do they continue to play on their own when we're not, you know, looking over their shoulder, or they're not expecting a survey? People have been pretty brutally honest. So like, at least so far, because I also say to them, like, I want to fail now. So I want you to be as brutally honest as you can now. Like, that's the biggest favor you can do for me right now. So, and then we'll see. I don't know. There isn't really a game that's quite like this on the App Store. There are cooking games, and they're like animated. They're often managing a kitchen kind of games. And then there's the Food Network. And so, you know, I don't think this game is going to be for everybody, but I think there are probably a few other people out there who want this, and we will see. And even if they don't, I'll keep playing it. Be an expensive game for one.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think we're getting cut off, yeah. But I called dibs.
Yep.
First slide.
Okay, thanks. If people have more questions, I'll just be outside. Thank you.